It's Warren Coughlin here, your ever-loving host. Welcome to another episode of the Business That Matters Spotlight. You know, one of the themes that's been emerging in this podcast is that progress to a better world is iterative and incremental. And as long as we as individuals and consumers insist on maintaining a 2024 material lifestyle without sacrifice, organizations are going to have to exist to fill our demands and expectations. And our existing infrastructure, technology, supply chains simply don't allow production that meets purity tests of environmental objectives. And to deliver on what we want, businesses have to scale. That means they have to use energy, and a lot of it. Energy consumption has environmental impacts. It also has cost implications. These lifestyles that we want cost more the more the energy costs. So if we want improvements in both of these areas, then companies that use large amounts of energy need to be helped to reduce their usage and reduce their costs. No small feat. Well, today's guest is leading the charge in accomplishing that. Behdad Bahrami is the CEO and founder of Edgecom Energy, and Edgecom is all about helping large energy consumers control their energy costs and reduce emissions. And they do this with solutions in AI and in the Internet of Things, and I'm sure some other things we'll hear about today. So Behdad, welcome to the Spotlight.
Hey, Warren, so happy to be here and really excited to talk about Edgecom Energy and the energy transition and all the things that are taking shape in this industry.
There's a lot changing too, isn't there?
There's a lot changing. I mean, we see it in our lives, right? We see more Teslas out there than ever before. We drive around and we see a lot of solar panels and we see, all these heat pumps being advertised. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff happening in our day-to-day lives, but businesses specifically have a lot of challenges when it comes to this energy transition. Happy to jump in and get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. So, but just to start off, always at the beginning of this podcast, just in case people can't hang out the whole time, I always like to make sure they get some value from the guests. So if you were to give one piece of advice to someone wanting to start a business that aims to tackle a big problem, what would it be?
So just be ready to think bigger than your biggest dream even looks like, right? So
I love that.
Yeah. So this is one thing that it took me a while to get to this point, right? And it's kind of like a natural inclination, especially with technical people, that, you try to kind of de-risk things and you kind of think, well, if I solve a smaller problem, then it'll be a lower risk and I'm more likely to hit my goals, right? And I had time and time again, I had advisors and investors and people that I would meet in the early days, and they're like, you're not thinking big enough. Like, you got to think bigger. You got to think of the whole world. You got to think of how much this energy transition, what it's going to mean to industrial, to residential, to all different industries. So think big and think bigger than you ever imagined would be possible for yourself. And it's really that mindset that I think allows, the people who make an impact on the world to do what they do. If you don't think it's possible and you can't even dream about it, then you're not going to be able to do it. So solve big problems and, have the gumption to go after it in a huge way. So think bigger. Whatever you think you're thinking is big, try to multiply that by 10 and think bigger than that.
Nice. Now, in getting there, though, like even from your own story, often the big thinking starts because of a small incident, right? Like, so before we get into the business itself, I'd love to just hear, because your story is actually interesting. Like, what got you interested in taking on this big problem in the first place? Like, you were working somewhere and you just had to solve an individual problem, right?
Yeah. So, I always had a passion for efficiency. It's like a weird thing, but even when I was a young kid, I was always obsessed with like smart cars and like smaller things that are getting the same thing done with less resource usage, right? And, when you're a kid, I wasn't thinking about, sustainability and carbon emissions and costs and all those things. It's just, there was something about getting more out of less that really just resonated with me to my core. I think it might have something to do with like my upbringing. I think my dad was always very, he lived a very kind of modest lifestyle. He was always about not wasting things and not making things more complicated than they need to be, and not making things bigger and more wasteful than they need to be. I think it came from childhood, right? And that's really what led me into something that is such a passion of mine, and it kind of just landed within my lap, right? So I studied materials engineering. And I had this mentality that I'm going to study materials engineering and it's going to allow me to create more efficient cars and planes and trains. And I'm going to come up with some new materials that are going to make things more efficient and make a big impact worldwide with my new materials that I've invented. But pretty quickly, I learned that if I don't go and get a PhD, that's not going to happen, right? With an undergrad degree, if you want to go work in really, crazy materials labs, you need that PhD. And I always had the entrepreneurial bug as well. Comes from family as well, right? So I have, my grandpa, my dad, my uncles, they're all entrepreneurs. And
oh, nice.
I was always sitting around the dinner table. It was always conversations about, the new venture that my uncle started, or, the new deal that he's chasing. And I think it kind of just, I grew up with it. And this combination of entrepreneurship with efficiency was kind of the foundation. And then when energy management kind of happened, it was just, my eyes just lit up. I was like, that it was kind of that discovery moment. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? And really the story was, a culmination of a few happy accidents. But I started, my first job out of university was working for a machinery company. And this machinery company needed my thermodynamic analysis skills to optimize the efficiency of their plastic machinery. And then I started doing that for a couple of years. My passion kept growing. And then one of their customers who bought this efficient machinery made an offer and said, hey, why don't you come be our energy manager? And at that time, that program of an energy manager was a brand new idea, where you were basically funded through the utility company and through the industrial company. So you were kind of this double agent working for the utility company, but inside an industrial facility as an embedded energy manager. And that's when I saw, oh my God, like there is so much opportunity here for efficiency, for sustainability, cost savings, emission reductions, and there's a lot of need out there for these kinds of solutions. So it's kind of a match made in heaven, right? My efficiency and entrepreneurship background and my love for it, combined with energy, getting more out of less. And we'll talk about how Edgecom Energy does that.
Yeah. Now there was some, didn't you have a story? There was like a 600 person plant or something, and you helped them achieve some efficiencies and just talk a little bit, because if I remember right, that sort of sparked the idea of, hey, this should be more broadly implemented.
Yeah. So this was a large plastics manufacturing facility, and I still have a great relationship with them. And they're really at the forefront of plastic innovation in Canada and worldwide. And this company, it was about a 600 person operation. They were spending a few $1 million on electricity every year. And with the programs and with the incentives and with the upgrades that we were able to do to their facility, the amount of energy savings that we were able to achieve was just almost unmatched in the province at that time. And really, it was myself doing the project management and selling these projects to management, but it was also, the innovative and sort of forward-looking mentality that the management of the company had to invest in energy at a time where, it was kind of a tougher sell than it is now, right? Mm-hmm. Upgrading their machinery, upgrading their operations, installing metering solutions, and really investing in the data that allows them to make the right decisions for energy. And then when I saw that this one facility was doing this, I said, there's thousands of facilities throughout North America that have this issue right now, or are gonna have this issue very soon as the grid continues to evolve with more solar and more wind and more electric vehicles and more heat pumps. The problem of energy management and the problem of electrifying everything is something that's going to come to the forefront, specifically for industrial companies, where you're talking about a $500,000-$600,000 per month electricity bill on the lower end, right? And having the data, having the understanding, having the the top of mind understanding of the programs and the incentives that exist. And it's really intricate and it's really detailed. And for a long time, it's kind of been this black box where, the utilities understand it, but no one else really understands it. And everyone else is just kind of trying to figure it out as they go and try to reduce those bills as they go. And there's been some kind of, small things that people have changed. You change your LED lighting in your plant and you save some money there, right? But there's a lot more that could be done. And this energy transition and this electrification of everything is really going to allow a lot of flexibility. And for the businesses that navigate it properly, it's going to be almost like a new source of revenue for them. In addition to cost savings, it's almost going to be like a new source of revenue. So it's really exciting.
And so what made you jump from, okay, I'm an employee who did this and I helped this business do this, to then launch saying, damn it, I'm going to start my own business that does this?
Stupidity? No.
Most entrepreneurs have a certain foolhardiness. Yes.
Yeah, I think I think you got to be a little bit crazy to do it. But I think it was also the market itself, right? So because I had this network, I had other companies coming to me and saying, "Hey, you're doing this for these guys. We also need help, right? Can you take a look at our bills? Can you do some analysis for us? What do I keep hearing about what you're doing for this plastics company. Why don't you help us a little bit, right?" So had a couple of lunches, attended a couple of conferences, had a couple of conversations, and it just kept coming up over and over again that no, this is really a problem that these facilities need help managing. And why not launch a business and try to help them? And really the first 2 years of the business, it was completely different, right? It was really all about consulting. Mm-hmm. And then pretty soon I realized that if we're going to scale this out and we're going to help more people and have a bigger impact nationally and then eventually internationally, really the only way to do this is through software, right? And this was at the same time where I had some of my roommates and some of my friends from university getting jobs at Google and getting jobs at Shopify. And really it was this tech and data combined with energy that's going to enable this impact to be made to how industrial facilities operate. And I saw that, and just one thing led to another, right? A couple of customers, a couple of conversations, and it was kind of this natural and organic story that led us to this point.
So I think that's an important thing for entrepreneurs to bear in mind. Anybody who's listening, right? Like what you start out with, good chance that it isn't what you end up with. I remember reading the book Creativity Inc. about Pixar, and they say basically not one of their hit movies bears anything but a passing resemblance to the idea that was originally pitched. So it's not just okay that you might pivot or slide or morph. It might actually be critical, wouldn't you say?
I think it's basically the foundation of a startup is your ability to adapt, right? And your ability to, almost increase the surface area for success by looking at everything and then narrowing down and iterating, and then looking and then expanding again, looking out and opening up and then narrowing down again, opening up and then narrowing down again. I think that iteration and those micro pivots that you make are really the foundation of an agile startup. And if you don't evolve with your market and you don't evolve with what your customers want, pretty quickly you're going to find yourself with no customers, right? So,
and I'd argue that it's not restricted to startups. I mean, I was dealing with a client today, 15 years out, and we're talking about how we're going to introduce AI into their business to make it more, responsive to their customers. Yeah. And if you don't keep up, you're going to lose. So listen, speaking to me like the technical dummy that I am, can you explain what Edgecom actually does, like what you do and who you do it for?
Yeah, I love the way you frame the question. So most people say, give us a pitch, right? So the way you frame the question really helps kind of paint the picture, right? So really what we do at the core is we are a software company, and we provide software solutions with a little bit of consulting tied to it, right? A tiny bit of consulting. And it's this software platform that basically gives industrial facilities the right data at the right time to make the right decisions in how they use energy and how they consume energy, and to find ways and give them insights to create cost savings and emission reductions based on those insights. So our product is a software. We have an app, we have some hardware that goes along with it. And really there's three core pillars in what this software enables you to do. So we have DataTrack. DataTrack is a plug and play IoT metering solution. So if I have a large industrial plant—
IoT means Internet of Things.
Internet of Things, yes, you got it, right? So basically it means it's like a wireless sensor, right? And you have this wireless sensor that is converting analog data that is usually available in analog to a digital signal, and then uploading that data into the cloud in a way that is able to provide value to customers very efficiently, very reliably, very good battery life. So there's a lot of things with IoT that go along with IoT. So DataTrack really enables you to have a real-time visibility of the energy consumption in your facility. So we have a customer, they do injection molding for office chairs, right? And they do plastics manufacturing, and they make these ergonomic office chairs. And before he had this DataTrack solution, he couldn't sit at his computer and just know how much is that line using in energy, how much is that line using in energy, what are the costs associated on a per line basis. So there are other energy management systems out there, obviously, but the way that we've enabled IoT to power these sensors means that they're plug and play, they're easy to install, very cost effective. So even smaller facilities that in the past it might not have been worthwhile for them to invest in energy metering can now buy these devices, get the box, clip on the devices themselves. It's almost like a Nest thermostat that you have at your house, right? Like you set it up yourself, starts uploading data to the cloud within 15 minutes, and now you have real-time visibility in how your facility operates. And then now that unlocks a lot of savings potential for you, right? So then you have alarms, you have insights, you have information of, what happened on the weekend when everybody was away, these lights were left on, or this air compressor was cycling when it didn't need to. So that enables a lot of savings, and really it comes from the data and visibility. So that's the DataTrack part of the story. Then we have PTrack, which is a grid prediction engine. So prices on the grid fluctuate really dynamically, and there's times where energy is really cheap, and there's times where energy is really expensive. So being able to predict when that's going to happen, and then providing that insight to a large industrial facility allows them to plan production in a way that's going to be way more cost effective. And this leads to up to $400,000 per megawatt in cost savings for a facility.
Wow. So, just in a practical level, just I'm thinking you got a labor force that has to work. Like when you say it informs decisions, like are they going to say, hey, we're going to move from daytime shifts to nighttime shifts in order to take advantage of this? And is that like a long-term decision, or do they make those decisions on a weekly basis about how they're shifting their work?
Yeah, it's a good question. And different clients kind of navigate it in a different way, right? So we have some clients who've just decided during the summer months where prices are going to be crazy, we're going to change our shift schedule, and we're just going to run at night. So we have customers that have done that. We have other customers that say, we have a continuous process and we can't touch it, and they've installed battery systems, right? They've installed smart thermostats that are
battery system. That would mean they store up the energy when it's accessed at its cheapest, and then access the batteries when the energy at its highest.
Exactly. So they just run production as is. Production doesn't even know what's happening on the grid, but during specific times they're using the battery as their energy source, and then during other times they're using the grid as their energy source, and then they fluctuate between that. So that's one of the things they change is as a battery system. They might change their shifts of when they operate. So some customers do it in a way that it's like kind of a long-term plan. And then we have some other ones that are very reactive, right? So they plan their production for today. And today during 4 to 6 p.m. is going to be a really high price peak. So 4 to 6 p.m. we call it curtailment, right? So we're going to set back our load a little bit, whether that's through offsetting some HVAC consumption, dimming some lights, or even some customers go as far as completely shutting down their operations for those 2 hours because the cost savings that they're able to get from that is so high, right? We have a company that's a mine, and they actually shut down completely, and they bring everyone up from the mine during those times, and because the cost savings are so high for them.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool, right? It's really adding that dynamicness to the grid, right? That really needs to happen, right?
I'm this is probably beyond this conversation, but I'd be fascinated to hear the debate that happens in the boardroom between the productivity efficiency people and the energy management people, because I could hear somebody else going, "What? We're bringing miners up from the mine and we're paying wages at $50 an hour, and that's non-productive." And then the flip side is, but there's energy savings. That must just be really interesting conversations to be.
So I've been a part of some of those conversations, and it's like when you put the dollar value on the table, it's almost like you just threw down your double aces in a poker game. Because this at the plastics company, it was the same thing. They were saying, it's so hard to set up these lines. It's such a pain, and doing this curtailment, what is it worth it? And you're like, hey man, it's going to be X million dollars, right, per year in savings. Well, how does that look on the bottom line? How does that affect your EBITDA, right? And when you throw those aces on the table, everyone kind of comes around pretty quickly, right? And the beauty is now these programs are becoming more and more valuable worldwide, right? So it's Ontario, California, New York, they were really at the forefront. But now as renewables kind of take traction, the way that the grid is looking is that more and more grids need to have, various grids of electricity providers throughout the world are going to need to have similar programs to what we've had here.
Interesting. And what's your third line?
And then the third line is called NeuroCharge. So basically what NeuroCharge does is we actually don't just give data and insights on what's happening on the grid. We actually take control of certain parts of your operation. So I mentioned earlier, if you have a battery energy storage system, or you might have HVAC, or you might have even some parts of your production that you feel comfortable allowing somebody else to control, and we call it dispatch. And that's where Edgecom's NeuroCharge comes in. So we have a very robust and very secure SCADA infrastructure, right? So that's basically like industrial automation that we're able to connect to these devices remotely and operate them in a way that's going to lead to significant cost savings and emission reductions for these facilities. So you can see how these three pillars kind of work together hand in hand.
Totally. Now you've got something new coming down the pipe, or is it? I'm not sure whether it's coming down the pipe or whether it's out there. It's called Copilot. Is that right?
Yes, the Copilot, my new baby, right? So the Copilot is really going to be a game changer, right? And we just recently, this was just last week, we received an award from ABB out of Sweden.
What's ABB?
ABB is one of the largest industrial electricity product suppliers in the world, right? So they're a massive multinational electrical company. They really supply a lot of the hardware that powers the grid worldwide. ABB is the company that makes that, right? And a lot of large industrial facilities, they supply their electrical components as well, right? So PLCs, drives, and like large electrical equipment they supply. And we've been in talks with them now for a few weeks. And we've been working on, they had a startup challenge where it was about using generative AI to help industrial facilities manage energy. Beautiful, that's exactly what we do. And this Copilot now was awarded as one of the most innovative solutions to the challenge that industrial facilities are going to have. And the Copilot is really exciting, right? Because what it allows us to do is it allows us to almost give a virtual energy manager to every industrial facility, right? Imagine if you have this person, right? This entity, if you will, that understands all the tariffs, understands all the prices, understands all the programs, understands how you operate and what your constraints are inside your factory, and then just tells you exactly what to do when, and it gives you all the information that you need to make the right decisions for your facility, right? And we've already launched this, so it's in beta right now. We have a few customers that are using it. There's been a lot of interest in it. And I really think this AI is going to empower a whole new approach to energy management. And it's customized, right? So when you make a software platform and you give it to an industrial user, there's only so much you can do on a per user basis. There's only so many changes you can make on the insights that a regular software platform will give. But this Copilot talks to the operators and really understands what their constraints are, right? What are your limitations? What's more important today, production or emissions, right? What's more important today, cost or emission? So it understands that information, and then it has a two-way conversation, and then it learns what their needs are and makes recommendations specifically for that facility. Every facility is different, right? Mm-hmm. So this is going to enable a new world of flexibility as the grid continues to evolve and as these cost structures continue to evolve. And I imagine a world where every industrial facility is using our Copilot.
Nice. That's a big dream.
Think big, right?
Now, right now, do people come looking for this, or is this like a new type of service? Like, do you have to educate people that it's available, or are people out shopping for you?
So it depends. I mentioned those three different pillars of the platform, right? So it depends which one you're talking about. On the Copilot side, yeah, we've had quite a bit of interest, like inbound of people looking to find ways to save on energy. And this looks like, a way that they could achieve those goals, right? Save on energy costs. That's on the Copilot side. But on the NeuroCharge and on the PTrack side, a lot of it is, through marketing and outreach and training and educating customers, right? So we spend a lot of time, I myself, plus our VP of sales, Coughlin, we spend a lot of time, hosting webinars, going to events, talking about these programs, educating clients. And it's really early day, right? Like we're really at the first inning of this energy transition. And a lot of facilities are starting to wrap their head around the fact that they're going to have to change how they do things, and it's not going to be just business as usual. And our job is to be a part of that, right? Help them understand, help them know what's coming down the line, and educate them, not just on our products, but educate them on what this market is going to look like in the next few years and what are the opportunities that exist for them, right? At the end of the day, they're looking for a dollar reduction per pound of whatever they produce, right? And energy management is a fantastic way to do that. And then you're also getting the sustainability and emissions benefits from that as well. So it's a great industry to be in.
And what's the big Uber goal? Like where are you going to be in 5 or 10 years?
So really, it's we've set a target of 100,000 industrial facilities by 2035, and I think that's completely achievable with the Copilot. And really, the beauty of this is the more facilities you speak to, the more capabilities the Copilot has, right? So I think that will allow us to continue to scale and continue to provide really valuable insights to more and more large manufacturing and large industrial customers, and really put a dent in the emissions that the world creates when we're trying to produce whatever it is we're trying to produce.
And this math may not be possible, but do you have any kind of back of napkin aspiration for the impact that you're going to have? Like I had an old client, they actually had a target number of removing 10 million tons of waste from the waste stream through their piece, with doing 100,000 industrial users of this. Do you get any kind of like, this is either an emissions reduction or a usage reduction that you would anticipate achieving?
Yeah. So a 5% reduction in scope 2 emissions is what our target is, right? Mm-hmm. From the 2024 baseline, right? So I think that's completely doable with this Copilot technology.
Just to find out, scope 2 emissions are...
Thanks for that. Scope 2 emissions are emissions that are produced from the electricity grid. Yeah. Right? So it's a secondary source of emissions, right? So those scope 2 emissions are something that we can make a huge impact on. And it's not enough to just add wind and solar. It's not enough, right? It's not, the grid operators cannot do this alone, right? So the utilities cannot do this alone. The utilities can make the regulations in a way that more wind and solar gets added onto the grid, but the users of energy also have to have a more dynamic approach to when they consume energy, right? We're gonna have gigawatts of batteries, we're gonna have gigawatts of energy storage on the grid, but the flexibility that consumers have is almost like a zero cost battery, right? If you use it at the right times, it's like you can reduce your consumption very easily. And there's a lot of programs and a lot of issues with it, but I think the AI is really going to enable a lot of facilities to participate in these programs.
And what's the competitive landscape like? Are there others doing this? I mean, like you and I talked, when some people are more horizontal, you're more vertical. Like, is there a rush to hit dominance?
Again, I think we're in the first inning, so it's going to be really interesting to see kind of, what business model and what technology ends up being the king of the hill. But I think it's such a big problem that there's going to be space for everyone, right? It's such a mass, like we have to rebuild the economy as it stands, right? We have to redo almost, if we're going to hit our emission reduction goals that we have, business as usual is just not going to cut it. And I don't think it's going to be one company that's going to come in and have the answers for emission reductions for industrial facility. I think it's going to be an ecosystem play where you're going to have battery vendors doing their part. You're going to have solar providers. You're going to have microgrid operators. And you're going to have some software providers that are going to enable some of these solutions to really make financial sense, right? So connecting the technology to what the grid wants and matching that interplay, right? So I think, the competitive landscape right now is really interesting. There's a lot of different strategies and a lot of pivots. And, like two of our biggest competitors here in Ontario have done massive pivots towards completely different sectors of the market, right? But again, it's the first inning. And I think it's going to be such a massive market, and it's such a big change in how basically every part of our lives is run, right? From the way we get to work, to what we do at work, to the things that we buy and the things that we consume and how they're manufactured, and the costs and everything that go into that. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for competitors, and I see some consolidation coming down the line, maybe in the next 3-4 years. But I still think we're in the first inning for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Now, a lot of people don't understand this part, but you're in a fairly, well, you're not necessarily, but you tap into a fairly regulated infrastructure, right? The grids, and every jurisdiction has its own unique infrastructure idiosyncrasies and regulatory idiosyncrasies. Does Copilot or your other tools, like, are those jurisdictional differences, is that a barrier to growth, or are you able to plug in?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So there are, sort of new technologies that are coming out that are enabling some sort of scale to happen on this front. So, there are providers of APIs, and there are companies that have gone out there and really, built a database of the different tariff structures that exist in different jurisdictions worldwide, and then they provide that as APIs. So that stuff, it's coming together, right? And there's also platforms that are evolving, right? So there are companies, there's one company, which I won't name, but they're trying to basically streamline instead of going jurisdiction by jurisdiction and building a platform for each jurisdiction, they're trying to give the grid operators a platform which will streamline how the grid operators actually run these programs, right? So giving them that platform, and then once that platform is built, then regardless of which jurisdiction you go into, you just need to tie into their platform, right? So that's creating that ecosystem. It's very smart, very tough challenge, very hard problem to solve. They're thinking big, and I love that. And that's going to enable a lot of solutions to be built on top of it if they're able to figure it out. But while we wait for those guys to figure it out, what we're doing is we're going jurisdiction by jurisdiction. If there are APIs available, we're using them. If the quality of those APIs is not up to par, we're building custom models for each of those jurisdictions. And for us, if you're providing services to, small mom and pop shops or convenience stores, those APIs might be good enough for you. But for us, we're providing these insights to someone who's using $5 million a year in energy. So the accuracy that we're able to deliver really matters. So for now, we're building those solutions on a grid by grid basis. Right. But depending on how the ecosystem takes shape, we're ready to adapt at any second.
And one of the things, whenever someone introduces new technology, I'm always interested in the human side of the sale of this kind of thing. That I imagine, like in an industrial environment, one of the knocks usually around folks who are in those industries is we've done things our way for a really long time, and we've got our engineer internally who's got the Excel sheet or the clipboard, and they're managing this stuff on their own. Like, is there change resistance that's a sales obstacle, or are people now coming around and no, this is necessary?
No, there's definitely resistance to change, and specifically in industry where everything is so high risk, right? So Christine, our marketing director, and I always have this conversation about how hard it is to be a buyer these days, right? There's so many solutions, and there's so much risk in every decision that you make. And the way of doing things kind of, it works. But once you train them and educate them that there's so much more opportunity that you're leaving on the table every single month, and every month that you don't manage these programs well, it's X amount of dollars that is just going out the door that doesn't need to, right? It's literally like it's like turning on your heater and then leaving a window open, right? When you paint the picture like that and you're able to actually, please don't do that. Yeah, our offices, like, they don't even let us open the windows. So it's they've solved that problem in a different way. But it's once you are able to put dollars and emissions numbers to the potential waste that's on the line, they come around pretty quickly, right? And I think sustainability is making a big impact as well, right? So,
I wanted to ask you that, like, what's the extent to which the sustainability or the emissions issue is driving these decisions, or is it more cost is what's driving the decision, and then we can brag about the sustainability part?
Yeah, I think it ebbs and flows, right? So, 7-8 years ago, we would talk about emissions and sustainability, and they were just like why are you talking to me about this? Like, just how much money? Like, just look at my bill. Let's talk about the money. Don't talk to me about emissions. And with the push towards ESG and some of the new rules that have come out both in Canada and the US, we had a podcast recently where we dived in deep on that front as well. But with some of the push, with some of the regulatory push, but also I think a lot of the push from consumers, right? I think more and more people are just waking up to the fact that we can't just keep business as usual is not going to work, right? We see the climate changing, and there's a big push from consumers on that front as well. So companies now are, it's for a while it was costs and then emissions down here. Then for a while it almost went emissions first, and then a little bit about costs with zero interest rate policy and some of the stuff that was going on over the past few years. And now it's kind of back to a more normal environment where they're looking at both. They're looking at costs first, what's the ROI? How is this going to affect my bottom line? But at the same time, if you're going to give me something that's going to increase my emissions, absolutely no way. Oh, it's going to reduce my emissions as well? Okay, so now we're talking, right? So luckily, the stuff that we do helps both on the bottom line and on the emissions. And what's more important really does ebb and flow throughout the years based on macro environments and sort of regulatory and climate and all those kinds of targets as well.
Now, we've talked about infrastructure and some of the other barriers, but in your case, potentially, I'm not sure if you're directly up against them, but you may be up against a pretty powerful industry that has some people in it who aren't all that keen on energy transition and efficiencies. How does that play out for you, if at all?
There's definitely a lot of money and a lot of interests in keeping things as they are. And specifically in Ontario, there's been a lot of push towards it. But I think common sense solutions do prevail in most cases. And I think Ontario, specifically in Ontario, we've had a lot of push towards battery energy storage systems and reinvesting in nuclear with the refurbishments. And I think we're making some of the right decisions, right? So I think now the world has woken up to the fact that, look, eventually we're going to have to get off fossil fuels. The sooner, the better, right? There is a cost element associated with that, right? It's not like we can't get off fossil fuels at any cost, right? Because if we're going to go back to the Stone Age, then nobody wants that, right? So it's kind of like, again, it's that ebb and flow of, what's the financial realities of the situation versus what are the emissions. And I think in Ontario, we're lucky in the sense that, we have a lot of nuclear, we have a lot of hydro, we have a good amount of sunshine. We've invested in battery energy storage systems. The corporate interests when it comes to fossil fuels do their thing and keep pushing. But I think the regulators are really waking up to the realities of the situation. And I think, common sense seems to be prevailing. I think in Canada, it seems to be prevailing. We have some aggressive targets for net zero and electrification pathways. But I think we have to be aggressive on this front, right? It's one of those things that, the risk of getting it right versus the risk of getting it wrong, and then the cost that you're going to have to spend for that. If you do a risk assessment, I think, we want to be on the right side of history when it comes to reducing our emissions. And I think, Canada and Ontario specifically, we've done a good job. The corporate interests push, but, it's a balancing act.
Right. Now, just shifting a bit, one of the other things I really appreciate about your approach is you've spoken about how you see the business as a foundation for people to be their best, like your business as a place for that. Can you talk about that? Like why does that matter to you, and how do you actually go about encouraging that within your team?
Yeah, that's so it's a really hard building that culture is a really hard thing to do, but I think it's worth it. And I think it's, the more you cultivate it, the more that it becomes a reality, right? So the culture that I'm trying to build here is bring people in who are extremely passionate about the energy transition and about where the electricity industry and the energy industry is headed. Give them guidance, give them a vision and a mission, and give them the ability to really be at their best, right? So really what we've done is we've created a platform that allows experts, we have a bunch of PhDs on our team, we have a bunch of data scientists, so people who are really passionate about this stuff, we bring them in, we give them a North Star, and we let them run with it, right? And it's one of those things that I think, when you come to our office, and, we just moved into our new office, when you come to the office, you sense that energy that everyone knows they're working on a mission that matters. Everyone knows they're working on something that's important for humanity. Yeah, we're a business at the end of the day. We're not a nonprofit. We need to make money. We need to keep our investors happy, and we need to keep our stakeholders happy. But, when you talk to a customer and a customer comes and gives you that stamp of approval that you guys saved me a lot of money and you guys saved me a lot of emissions, and now because of what Edgecom did for me, I don't have to move my production over to somewhere else with a dirty grid, right? I'm able to stay here in Ontario and keep jobs here in Ontario. So being mission driven, I think, really helps. You attract the right kind of people, and then, giving them that ability and that flexibility to do their best work, their most creative work, and get good results out of it as well. So I think we've found that right balance.
And did the COVID, like, one of the things I've observed with some of my clients is pre-COVID, it was all about cost reduction. But then they realize, oh my God, my supply chain can be easily disrupted. And so supply chain security became of greater importance. And that's why there's some of that repatriation of manufacturing. Has that helped you? Because what you're offering is the counterweight to higher labor cost in North America, but we can do massive energy reduction costs, and that can facilitate your repatriation of your manufacturing. Are those kind of conversations happening?
Absolutely. So we have a lot of data from our customers, right? And we're able to kind of see on a macro perspective, how is production really, the concept of making things here in Ontario, is it getting more or less, right? And we were able to see during the COVID years, and obviously interest rate policies had something to do with it as well, but it's persisted beyond COVID, right? So now we see production outputs way higher than what they were back in 2018, 2019, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with this onshoring. A lot of it has to do with securing supply chains. I also think even consumers are really waking up to the fact that, look, if I buy roofing products that are manufactured in China, and even if they're cheaper, there's a lot of built-in emissions that are not really being counted properly right now. Their grid is coal-powered in many cases. You got to ship that. Why not make it right here, right? Even if it's going to cost the same or a little bit more, why not make it right here? And we see that in our customers' data, that onshoring is really happening, and a lot of our customers are expanding their operations as well. So a lot of them are international, and they have a production facility here in Ontario, one in Europe, one in Asia, but now they're kind of jigging where they're making their investments and growing in North America more and more. I'm a strong believer in Canada, where we are, in terms of our immigration policies, and I think we're attracting the right kinds of people to come here and build lives here. And I think Canada is gonna benefit huge from this industrial base that we already have, specifically in Ontario, in Alberta, in Quebec. So there's going to be a lot of potential, and we're already seeing the onshoring happening within our data. Love your optimism.
So listen, your skill and expertise got you to where you are at a business skills level as a leader of the organization. Like, what are the challenges that you think you're going to have to overcome to hit that big Uber goal? Where as a leader do you have to grow, or what does the business have to also cultivate in terms of skills?
I think that's a fantastic question, and I myself, I'm a technical guy, I'm an engineer, and I came at this from the problem perspective, right? So I think, continuing to focus on what the customer wants and needs has to be our core foundation. And then as we develop some of that some of those corporate skill sets, right? Whether it's M&A or finance or cultivating those, but making sure that as the company grows, and as the company grows, it's really easy to become this kind of corporate establishment, right? So maintaining those core foundations and those core values that made us who we are, putting the customer at the center of it all, putting the impact that we're making at the center of it all. The rest of it will grow and evolve naturally and organically the way that it's supposed to, as the market grows, right? So myself as a leader, I think, adding a lot of business capabilities to my skills, right? the ability to kind of really quickly understand the balance sheet and really quickly be able to look at the numbers and make some decisions. That's something that I've had to work on quite a bit, and I think I'm there now. I think shoring up some of my weaknesses with new hires as well is something we're working on, but maintaining that focus on the customer and maintaining that focus on the outcome that we deliver for the client, you can't go wrong with that, right? So we have to keep doing that. And myself, I'm just growing every day. It's a startup, right? At the end of the day, there's not a day where I come in here and there isn't a new problem to be solved. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, I think, when you're going to look back on this journey, it's going to be such a fun and exciting adventure that we undertook with Edgecom. And the more impact we make for our clients, the happier they'll be in the long run, the happier we'll be in the long run. And we just got to keep going.
So I got four rapid fire questions for you to finish. All right. One decision or action that
Can I get a sip of water before you go, or?
Yeah, go for it, man. One decision or action that most helped you get where you are.
Going for it before I was ready. Just you're 60% of the way there, 50% of the way there, just go.
Nice. One aspect of running a business you've yet to master.
I think it's maintaining that even head when things happen. So sometimes I get really excited when good news comes out, or I get really pissed off when bad news comes out. So being a little bit more stable and level-headed, meditating more, I think would help.
Nice. One personal quality that you most had to improve or overcome to get where you are.
The ability to influence others on a whim and just get into that mode of motivating employees or motivating the team to work on a hard problem and get through it without kind of losing their energy, right? So just out of nowhere, being able to give like a 1-minute inspirational speech to move things along and get people excited again about the mission.
And one personal quality that most contributed to your success.
I'm just ridiculously optimistic. Like I
haven't picked that up at all.
There's I don't know. I think there's something wrong with me, right? When it comes to people, when it comes to business, when it comes to opportunities, I just always think it's going to work out. I'm not a crazy guy just not doing the work behind it either, right? So it's kind of like, I believe that with enough hard work, with enough perseverance, with enough grit, you can achieve almost anything. And that optimism has always been there, and just continuing to push that optimism and give that energy to the rest of the team, I think has been really a really helpful trait that I had. Nice.
That's a great way to finish off. Where can people find you?
So we are at www.edgecom.ai, EDGECOM, edgecom.ai. And if you go there, you can fill out a form. You can also email me directly at bbahrami@edgecom.ai.
And Bahrami is spelled?
BAHRAMI.
There you go. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for your time, Warren. Super happy to be here and can't wait to talk some more about this energy transition whenever we get the chance.
Right on. Cheers.
Cheers.